I used to think there was a limit to how low someone could go. I genuinely believed that even the worst people had some kind of internal floor, some bedrock of basic human decency that would prevent them from inflicting certain kinds of pain. I don't believe that anymore. I learned better. I learned it watching my sister try to protect her daughters from a man who has spent years proving that cruelty doesn't have a bottom. It just keeps drilling down, finding new depths, new ways to hurt. His name doesn't matter. What matters is what he did, what he's doing, and the fact that he timed it all for maximum damage. Because that's who he is. That's who he's always been. Let me take you back first, because you need to understand how we got here. You need to see the foundation he laid years ago, the groundwork of fear and control that never really went away, even after the divorce, even after my sister finally got herself and those girls out of that house. They were married for 8 years. 8 years of my sister walking on eggshells, learning to read his moods like a meteorologist tracking storm systems, trying to predict when the pressure would drop and the violence would come. Started small, the way it always does. A raised voice, a slammed door, criticisms that seemed almost reasonable at first, wrapped in concern. Asterisk, you're not managing the household properly. You're too soft on the girls. You're not taking care of yourself. Asterisk. Then the criticisms got sharper, meaner. They came with contempt dripping from every word. Asterisk, you're lazy. You're stupid. You can't do anything right. Asterisk, the girls, 7 and 9 at the time, would hear him from their rooms upstairs, his voice rising and rising until it filled the entire house like smoke, choking out everything else. My sister tried to manage it. She tried to be better, whatever that meant in his eyes. She cooked his favorite meals. She kept the house immaculate. She agreed with him, apologized, stayed quiet. But nothing was ever enough because it was never really about her failures. It was about his need to dominate, to control, to make himself feel big by making her feel small. The first time he hit her, he apologized immediately. He cried. He swore it would never happen again. He'd been stressed at work, he said. He didn't know what came over him. She believed him because she loved him, because she wanted to believe that the man she married was still in there somewhere, buried under all that anger. It happened again 3 months later, then 6 weeks after that. Then it became almost routine, a terrible rhythm in their lives. He'd explode, he'd hit her. A shove into the wall, a slap across the face, once a closed fist to her ribs that left her unable to breathe right for a week, and then he'd apologize. Sometimes he'd bring flowers. Sometimes he'd just get quiet and sullen, waiting for her to forgive him without asking for it. The worst part, the part that still makes my stomach turn, is that the girls saw it. Not every time, but enough. Enough that they learned what their father was capable of. Enough that they learned their mother wasn't safe, that home wasn't safe, that love could look like violence if the person doing it said the right words afterward. I remember my older niece, she must have been 11, telling me once that she kept a backpack under her bed, packed, just in case they needed to leave fast. This was before the divorce, when my sister was still trying to make it work, still believing somehow that she could love him into being better. My niece told me this at a family barbecue casually, like she was talking about a school project. I keep extra clothes in there and some snacks and my sister's favorite stuffed animal. Mom doesn't know. Her voice was so small, so matter-of-fact, like she'd already accepted that this was just how life worked. I felt something crack inside my chest when she said that. This child, this smart, funny, beautiful child, had learned to live in a state of permanent emergency preparedness. She'd taken on a responsibility no 11-year-old should ever have to carry. And she was protecting her mother's feelings by keeping it secret, because even at that age, she understood that my sister was barely holding it together. The divorce finally came when my older niece was 13 and the younger was 11. He'd hit my sister in front of them one too many times. The younger girl had started having panic attacks at school, her grades plummeting, and a teacher had noticed bruises on my sister's arm, half hidden by her sleeve. CPS got involved. There was an investigation. My sister finally filed. The divorce was vicious. He fought for custody, claimed my sister was unstable, that she was turning the girls against him. His lawyer painted him as a concerned father, painted my sister as vindictive and manipulative. But the girls had told their story to the court-appointed psychologist. They'd been honest about what they'd seen, what they'd lived through. In the end, my sister got primary custody. He got supervised visitation that eventually became standard visitation every other weekend, some holidays. The girls hated it. Every single visit was a battle. They'd beg not to go. They'd come back quiet and tense. And it would take days for them to relax again, to trust that they were safe. But the court order was the court order, and my sister followed it because she was terrified of giving him any ammunition to use against her. Then he started dating someone new. Within a year, he was remarried. My sister actually felt relieved. She thought maybe this new wife would soften him, would take his focus off his need to control and punish. The girls were less optimistic, but their visits got slightly less frequent as he started building a new life. My sister dared to hope that maybe, finally, they could all just move forward. That's when she met David. David was gentle in a way that seemed almost old-fashioned. He opened doors, he listened when she talked, he made her laugh. Really laugh, the kind of laughter she'd forgotten she was capable of. He was patient with the girls, never pushing, never trying to replace their father, just being steady and kind and present. Over time, they grew to love him. He became the dad they'd needed, the one who showed up for school plays and helped with homework and never, ever raised his voice in anger. They got married when my older niece was 16. It was a small ceremony, family only, and I remember watching my sister's face during the vows and thinking, asterisk finally. She's finally happy. Asterisk the girls were both smiling. Even my father, who'd been wary of David at first, was beaming. It felt like a new chapter, like all the darkness was finally behind them. Then, a year and a half ago, David died. He was 47 years old. No warning, no history of heart problems. He went to bed one night and didn't wake up. Massive heart attack in his sleep. My sister found him in the morning, still and cold beside her, and the sound she made when she realized. I was on the phone with her within minutes, and I can still hear that sound. It wasn't a scream. It was something worse, something animal and broken. A grief so enormous it couldn't be contained by a human voice. The girls were devastated. They'd lost the only real father figure they'd ever had. The person who'd made them feel safe and loved without conditions. My younger niece stopped eating for a week. My older niece, who was 17 by then and trying so hard to be strong for everyone, started having nightmares again. The same ones she'd had during the worst years with her biological father. And then there was the baby. My sister had been 4 months pregnant when David died. They'd been so excited, so happy. The girls were thrilled about having a little sister. It was supposed to be this beautiful expansion of the family David had built with them. Instead, my sister had to go through her pregnancy alone, drowning in grief, trying to hold herself together for her daughters, while her body grew this new life that would never know its father. She gave birth 6 months after David's death. A girl. She named her Hope, because what else do you do when everything is darkness? You choose light, even if it's just a fragile flicker. You choose to believe that life can still be good, still be worth living, even when it's just taken everything from you. The girls adored their baby sister from the moment they saw her. She became their anchor, their reason to smile again. My younger niece, who'd barely spoken for months, would spend hours just holding Hope, singing to her, making her laugh. My older niece, who was preparing for college applications and trying to figure out her future, talked about wanting to be close to home so she could watch her sister grow up. Hope was healing them, slowly, the way babies do, by being purely innocent, purely joyful, purely present. My sister was still drowning, but she was learning to tread water. She was going through the motions, getting the girls to school, taking care of the baby, showing up for therapy appointments she sometimes barely remembered attending. She was doing what she had to do because that's what mothers do. You keep going. You survive. You put one foot in front of the other even when every step feels impossible. That's when he came back. Started with a phone call. This was about 8 months ago. He told my sister he was sick. Cancer, he said. Serious. He was going through treatment and wanted to see her and the girls, to make amends, to tell them he was sorry for everything he'd put them through. He'd been doing therapy, he claimed, working on himself. His new wife had helped him see how wrong he'd been. He wanted to be better. He wanted them to know that before it was too late. My sister didn't trust him. Of course she didn't. But he was the girl's father, and what if he was telling the truth? What if he really was dying? Could she deny her daughters the chance to make peace with him, to say goodbye if it came to that? She talked to the girls. They didn't want to go, but they felt obligated. Guilty. He was still their father, no matter what he'd done. So they went. My sister and my father, she'd asked him to come for support, drove 3 hours to his house with the girls. They'd moved to a different state after the remarriage, far enough that visits had become infrequent, which everyone had been quietly grateful for. The house was nice, suburban, neat, carefully maintained. His new wife answered the door, all smiles and hospitality. "He's so glad you came," she said, ushering them inside. "This means so much to him." He looked fine, healthy, maybe a little thinner than my sister remembered, but not sick, not dying. He hugged the girls, both of them stiff and uncomfortable in his arms. He made small talk, offered them food, acted like this was a normal family visit, like there wasn't years of trauma and terror sitting heavy in the room. They were there for maybe 45 minutes before he said it. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he started, his voice taking on that serious, reasonable tone my sister remembered too well, about the girls, about how much I've missed being a real father to them. "I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you, but I'm different now. I've changed. And I really think the girls should come live with me, full time. I can provide stability, a 2-parent household, a father figure." My sister actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity was so enormous it came out as laughter. "You can't be serious." He was serious. He'd already talked to a lawyer. He was filing for a modification of custody. The girls were older now, he argued. They needed structure, guidance. My sister had been through so much trauma, losing David, having a baby. Was she really in a position to provide what they needed? My father stood up. I wish I'd been there to see it. My father, who's not a confrontational man, who's spent his whole life being diplomatic and measured, stood up and said, "This is bullshit. You don't get to do this. You don't get to hurt them again." The ex didn't raise his voice. He just smiled, cold and thin. "I'm their father. I have rights, and I'm going to exercise them." There was no cancer, no illness, no dying confession, just a calculated manipulation designed to get my sister into his territory so he could ambush her with this, so he could see her reaction, so he could feel powerful again. They left immediately. The girls cried the entire drive home. My older niece kept saying, "He can't do this, right? The court won't let him do this." My sister didn't have an answer. She was too shocked, too blindsided, too exhausted. She hired a lawyer. A good one, expensive, paid for with the last of David's life insurance money. The lawyer said he had a case, but it was weak. My sister had primary custody, the girls were teenagers with clear preferences, there was a documented history of domestic violence. But family court is unpredictable. Judges can be swayed by claims of rehabilitation, by new spouses and stable households, by father's rights arguments that ignore everything except biology. The girls gave statements. They were clear, articulate and firm. They did not want to live with their father. They didn't even want the current custody arrangement, but they understood they didn't have a choice. The idea of losing their mother, losing their baby sister, losing the home where they felt safe, it was destroying them. My older niece's grades started slipping. She stopped talking about college. She started talking about waiting, staying close to home, making sure her mom and sisters were okay. Like she was that 11-year-old girl again with a packed backpack under her bed, preparing for disaster, taking on responsibilities that were never supposed to be hers. My younger niece stopped sleeping. I'd call my sister at night and hear the baby crying in the background, and she'd say, "I'm up anyway. Your niece has been awake for hours. She's afraid if she falls asleep, she'll wake up and find out he won." That we're packing her things. My sister was barely functioning. She was keeping it together for the girls, for the baby, but I could hear it in her voice every time we talked. She was breaking. The grief over David, the terror of losing her daughters, the exhaustion of caring for an infant while fighting a legal battle she never wanted. It was crushing her. And through it all, he kept pushing. His lawyer sent letters, filed motions, requested evaluations. He wanted a home study. He wanted the girls to have therapy to address their parental alienation. As if their fear of him was something my sister had manufactured instead of something he'd earned. We thought we had time. The court date wasn't scheduled until February. We thought we had months to prepare, to build the case, to help the girls process what was happening. We thought we could at least have Christmas. Then, last week, December 19th, the process server showed up at my sister's door. She'd just put the baby down for a nap. The girls were at school. She was standing in her kitchen, still in her pajamas because she'd been up half the night with hope teething, drinking cold coffee and trying to summon the energy to shower. The knock was official, firm, unmistakable. She knew what it was before she opened the door. Modified custody petition. He was asking for full custody, to be awarded immediately pending the court hearing. Emergency order. He claimed my sister was mentally unstable, that her grief made her unfit, that the girls were being neglected in favor of the baby. All lies. All carefully constructed lies designed to sound plausible to a judge who didn't know them, who didn't know what he was, who would see only the legal fiction he and his lawyer had built. The proposed order included a pickup date, December 26th, the day after Christmas. She called me from her bathroom floor. I was at work, in a meeting, and I saw her name on my phone and just knew. I stepped out, answered, and heard her sobbing so hard she couldn't form words. Took 10 minutes before she could tell me what happened. He'd timed it, deliberately, precisely. He'd filed the emergency motion knowing exactly when it would be served, knowing it would land less than a week before Christmas, knowing it would detonate in the middle of their holiday like a bomb designed to inflict maximum psychological damage. This wasn't about the girls. This was never about the girls. This was about power, control, punishment. My sister had escaped him once, had built a life without him, had found happiness with David, and now had a child he had nothing to do with. She'd moved on. She'd won. And he couldn't tolerate it. So he waited. He waited until she was most vulnerable, grieving, exhausted, focused on healing her family. He waited until the holidays, when families gather and celebrate and try to feel safe. And then he struck, cold and calculated, knowing exactly how much it would hurt. The girls came home from school that day and found their mother crying at the kitchen table, legal papers spread in front of her, the baby awake and fussing in her carrier. My older niece read the documents. I wasn't there, but my sister told me later that she watched her daughter's face go blank, all emotion draining out of it, leaving something cold and distant and far too old for 18. When? Was all she asked. The 26th, my sister whispered. He wants you the day after Christmas. My younger niece ran upstairs. They heard her door slam, heard things being thrown. My older niece just stood there, still holding the papers, and said in that same flat voice, "He's not going to win. He can't win. We'll tell them. We'll make them understand." But she didn't sound convinced. She sounded like someone trying desperately to believe in a justice that hadn't shown up for them yet. The lawyer said the emergency order was unlikely to be granted, but there'd be a hearing the day after Christmas. My sister and the girls would have to appear. They'd have to spend their Christmas day preparing, gathering evidence, getting ready to stand in court and defend their family while he sat there with his new wife, playing the concerned father, the reformed man, the victim of his bitter ex-wife's vindictiveness. My sister tried to make Christmas normal. She put up the tree. She wrapped presents. She baked cookies with the girls, the three of them moving through the motions silently, going through familiar rituals that felt hollow now, haunted by what was coming. The baby, oblivious, gurgled and smiled, grabbing at ornaments, bringing tiny moments of light into the darkness. But it's not normal. Can't be. How do you celebrate when you know that in 2 days you're going to have to stand in a courtroom and fight to keep your children? How do you pretend everything is fine when the person who terrorized you for years is using the legal system as a weapon to terrorize you again? I keep thinking about control, about how abuse doesn't end when the relationship ends, about how men like him never really let go. They just find new ways to hurt you, new systems to exploit, new vulnerabilities to target. The courts were supposed to protect them. The restraining orders, the custody agreements, the documented history of violence, all of it was supposed to mean something, supposed to keep them safe. But here we are. He's still finding ways in, still inflicting pain, still demonstrating that he can reach them whenever he wants, that their peace is conditional, that their safety is an illusion he can shatter at will. And the timing, God, the timing, Christmas, the one time of year that's supposed to be about family, about love, about children feeling secure and cherished. He knew that. He knew exactly what he was doing when he made sure those papers would be served less than a week before Christmas. He knew it would poison the holiday, would make it impossible for them to relax or feel joy or forget, even for a moment, that he was coming for them. It's not enough that he hit my sister. It's not enough that he traumatized his daughters. It's not enough that they escaped and built a new life and are still healing from what he did. He has to keep hurting them. He has to keep asserting his power, his control, his presence in their lives. He has to make sure they never, ever forget that he can still reach them. I want to believe the judge will see through it. I want to believe that the girl's testimony will matter, that the documented history will matter, that justice will prevail. But I've seen too much to be confident. I've seen how family courts bend over backward to preserve fathers' rights even when those fathers have proven they're dangerous. I've seen how men like him can perform rehabilitation, can play the reformed sinner, can weaponize therapy speak and second chances to get access to the people they've hurt. My sister is terrified she's going to lose them. She lies awake at night next to the baby, Hope, who was supposed to represent a new beginning, and imagines her older daughters being forced into his car, driven away, trapped in his house where she can't protect them. She imagines them calling her in the middle of the night, scared, wanting to come home, and her being powerless to help because a judge decided their father's rights mattered more than their safety. The girls are trying to be strong. My older niece has been researching emancipation laws, trying to figure out if there's a way to legally separate herself from this situation. She's 18, she could, theoretically, make her own choices. But she won't leave her sister. She said as much. If the court orders them to go, she'll go, because she won't let her younger sister face him alone. My younger niece has stopped talking about it entirely. She focuses on the baby, spending every moment she can holding Hope, playing with her, making her laugh. I think she's trying to memorize her, trying to store up enough love and joy to carry her through whatever comes next. She's 16 years old, and she's preparing for exile like some medieval princess being married off to an enemy kingdom. And tomorrow is Christmas Eve. Tonight, my sister will probably sit up late wrapping the last presents, trying to make everything look normal. The girls will probably pretend to be excited in the morning, will open gifts and eat breakfast and try to give their mother and their baby sister a good day. They'll take pictures. They'll smile. They'll perform holiday joy while the hearing looms 36 hours away. And he'll be somewhere in another state, probably pleased with himself, probably feeling powerful, probably telling his new wife some version of events where he's the hero, the father fighting to save his daughters from their unstable mother, the man who deserves a second chance. I used to wonder what kind of person deliberately hurts children. I used to think it required some kind of sadism, some active desire to inflict suffering. But watching this unfold, I realize it's simpler than that. It's just ego. Just the pathological need to win, to dominate, to prove that you're in control. The children's suffering is incidental. It doesn't matter to him if they're happy or sad, thriving or traumatized. What matters is that they're his, that everyone acknowledges his ownership, his rights, his power over them. That's what makes it so dark. He's not hurting them because he hates them. He's hurting them because they're tools, weapons he can use against my sister. He's hurting them because their pain is a demonstration of his control. He's hurting them because he can, because the system gives him the means to do it, because society tells him he has the right. My respect for him has been in the negative numbers for years. I thought it had bottomed out a long time ago, that there was nowhere lower for it to go. But this calculated cruelty, this deliberate weaponization of the holidays, this willingness to terrorize his own children to punish their mother, has shown me I was wrong. There is no bottom. There's always another layer of cruelty beneath what you thought was the worst. Christmas used to mean something in my family. It used to be sacred, a day when we all came together and everything else fell away. My sister loved Christmas. She'd start planning in October, would make elaborate meals, would create traditions for her girls to remember. Even last year, drowning in grief, 6 months after David died and huge with pregnancy, she tried. She'd put up lights and made cookies and bought thoughtful presents because she wanted her daughters to have something good, something warm, something that felt like hope. This year, Christmas is a countdown to a courthouse. What should be safety now feels like a threat. He made it that way. Tomorrow we'll gather, smile, exchange gifts, and pretend everything is fine for the kids. But we'll all know that in 2 days this family could be torn apart, that the man who abused their mother might win simply because the law allows him to try. I don't have a resolution. Maybe the judge will listen. Maybe the girls' voices will matter. Or maybe they'll learn that cruelty can hide behind legal paperwork and still be rewarded. Some people choose the moment of greatest vulnerability to strike. Sometimes they do it at Christmas because it hurts more. That's who's ruining Christmas for my family. A man with no limit to his cruelty, and a system willing to hand him the tools. Merry fucking Christmas. If you want to keep reading stories about abuse survivors, custody battles, and the systems that fail families, subscribe.